everybody. Thanks so much for listening to Fire Breathing Rob. If you're listening to us for the first time, we appreciate you being here. Definitely subscribe, like, and share this video, but mostly subscribe. We're trying to really bump up our numbers as much as we can, and we're being successful so far, but more numbers are always appreciated. So thanks again. Today we have a special guest, and we're going to go into talking about well, I'll even just start out saying this person that's going to be coming on has a really impressive life story. It's really sad, some of the things that she's went through, but I'm sure it's made her stronger. This is Debbie Clark, and she has a book coming out soon, and she's going to be speaking about that. If you want to check her out on YouTube, she just started a YouTube page called Complex Parenting Resolve, and it's a channel on YouTube. Again, Complex Parenting Resolve. So if you could subscribe to that, we'd both be appreciative of that. But Debbie, thanks so much for coming on today. Greatly appreciate the time.
Thanks very much, Rob, for having me. Look forward to it.
So can you tell the audience, as we do start off the interview, a little synopsis about your incredible life story?
Yeah. I guess I started off with adopting two daughters. They're both natural half-sisters from the same biological mother, but two different fathers. And we adopted them as babies. The first one was at 6.5 months. The second one was almost a year later at 4.5 months. They're 13 months apart. And that was now 24 years ago. So they're all grown up now. And, but they have, between the two of them, they have multiple learning disabilities, multiple mental illnesses. They both identify differently within the LGBTQ community. My husband and I divorced about 7 years after we adopted them, maybe 6 years after we adopted them. And so I became a single mom. Yeah. During the divorce, I suffered my first of 3 or 4 major depressions. And so I had to struggle with being a single parent, struggle with my own mental illnesses. I was also a director of finance / acting CFO. So I was, in the senior management position at the time. I lost about 2 jobs through that, that journey. And what else can I tell you?
So, we hear a lot of people, and I'm sure there's tons of books about being a parent. I'm not a parent personally, but obviously I hope to be one down the road. So you were a parent, obviously, to 2 girls that have grown up right now. What is one thing that you learned while you were a parent that other parents do wrong, or maybe you did wrong in regards to parenting?
Well, first of all, let me address the idea of the books. And sure. A lot of times the books are very generic in parenting, be nice to your kid. I mean, I don't know. I find them very, very generic. Okay. And when you're parenting special needs kids or kids with mental illnesses and LGBTQ and all of these aspects that I had to deal with, sure. Those parenting books, parenting magazines, parenting anything are thrown out the window. It just didn't work. And so one of the biggest challenges that I guess I would say to any parent is, and particularly parents that have to address complex situations such as mine, a lot of those books don't necessarily work. And, you have to really kind of do trial and error on your own aspect. And one of the biggest, I'll give you a perfect example. Children that are adopted, they literally go through loss and trauma. Now, even if they're adopted as babies, they may not even know that they have loss or trauma, but their bodies have gone through that stress. And so they may react to things that they don't realize that they are reacting to. So most kids go through a a phase of separation anxiety, don't want to be separated from mommy, around 2 years old. Well, that may be extended almost on a permanent basis with adopted children, because they've already been more or less separated from their biological parents, and they're extra sensitive to that fact. So that may be a good example of, you have to be very aware of your child, and you have to understand that their reactions to things may not be what you would expect their reactions to be, based on whatever triggers they have experienced. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Debbie, my question is, you said your daughters were brought up by the same mom, obviously different fathers. With that said, when did your daughters come out to you as Lbgtq? And a lot of people that we've had on and talking about this topic, they say that it's really hard for them to come out to their family members, to their parents. Some parents are accepting, some aren't. So how did you handle that, and how did they come out to you?
That's actually kind of a cute story. My youngest was, I actually suspected that she was lesbian when she was about 3 years old.
Oh,
and,
wow.
and the reason, and I guess this is another, my 4 guiding pillars that I have. This is one of my guiding pillars, is know your child, like be very observant with them. And really what was happening was the little girlfriends that she was having, I could tell that it wasn't a friendship, it was a crush. But she didn't know that. So I just kind of kept quiet, and I didn't really pay too much attention. By the time she was 9 years old, she was telling her classmates that she was a boy without a penis.
Oh, wow.
And, the teacher obviously tells me this. And so I went to her counselor, and said, okay, well, this is obviously not normal, or regular, we should say. So she recommended 2 groups. And the one that I chose was they called it an asexual discovery group. And so what it was a very informal process where you sat down with your child and these people that all identified in varying different areas of LGBTQ. So we had the psychiatrist was a gay man, we had a lesbian, we had a transgender, we had a queer, we had all these different people. And what they did was they literally talked about their own story.
Yeah.
And of course, I had never even known anybody that was in the LGBTQ community. I mean, I knew of it, it was something particularly more in the homosexuality side. But the one that really drew to my daughter's attention was the transgender that had gone from male to female, the other way around, female to male.
Yeah. And
my daughter basically really identified with them. And it turned out that she explored transgender for about 3 or 4 years, but she actually has decided not to, to transform or change sexes. She identifies as both. So she doesn't identify as a female. She doesn't identify as a male. Some days she identifies as a male. Other days she identifies as a female. It's all pretty confusing to me.
Yeah.
But
right.
It's something that I definitely, I've observed, and like, this is not something she's making up. It's not something she's controlling. It's not something she's deciding on. It is really how she's thinking about it. But then I guess a week or 2 after that session, we're in the car, and she's in the front seat, and my other daughter, who is 10 years old, is in the back seat of the car. And my younger daughter, the 9-year-old, basically, I'm purposely not mentioning names because I don't want them to be.
Yeah.
Fine. So my youngest daughter basically turns to me and she goes, "Mom," she goes, "I'm gay." And I went, "Okay, like, how do you know that you're gay?" And she says, "Well," she said, "when I look at boys, I just go, so what? But when I look at girls, I do, whoa, whoa." And it was like the little glint in her eye. Yeah. And I laughed and I said, "Well, that's actually a pretty good explanation." And my older daughter in the back, she goes, "Mom, what's gay?" And I said, "Well, you know how you have crushes or you like boys?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, the younger one in the front, she has that same feeling, but with girls." And so my daughter in the back kind of went, "Oh." And then she thought about it and she goes, "Oh, ew, oh," like this. And I tried to explain to her that it was not bad. It was very, like, it's natural. Everybody has their own preferences. Yeah. And that, you have to respect their preferences. So that was kind of the introduction. And from there, it was a little bit of a secret within the family. But, as time went on, my younger daughter literally came out and started telling people that she was, that she was a lesbian. And so she became more and more, kind of open about it. But she got bullied in school an awful lot.
Yeah.
And it was funny, a lot of times the kids were much more accepting of the fact than the parents. A lot of times she had girlfriends, and they really were truly platonic girlfriends, that she wanted to hang around with. But once the parents found out that she was a lesbian, they actually prevented their daughters from playing with my daughter. And I don't know why, but it was almost like it was going to rub off on their child or something. Right. It was ridiculous, but it was very, very hard. And I know, observing her through her whole childhood, it is a genetic composition. It is not something by choice. And she went through a really, really hard time with it. And it's been a big part of who she is, and also a big part of who she would prefer not to be. She would prefer not to be, even though she's very proud of who she is. It's painful.
Yeah. Are we talking about she's still being bullied then, correct?
No. I mean,
okay.
She, it was just during her, the grade school. High school was a bit different. She actually ended up, I put her into a high school. Well, first of all, she had to go into this special school at 13 because of the suicide, right?
Yeah.
So she went into residential treatment at 13. So part of it, I believe, was a whole mishmash of things. I mean, her mental illnesses of ADHD and learning disabilities, and they became depression and anxiety, and she became suicidal. So she was in treatment. The treatment center, there's only a small amount of kids that go in there. There's about 17 of them that were there at any one time. So it was very protective environment. And so she was very, they really encouraged her identity within that school. So I think it really helped her.
Okay. And you say your other daughter is Lbgtq, correct? Or no?
Yeah, no, that's the exact opposite story. Okay. She literally was boy crazy her whole life. She literally, at 16 years old, I was having quite a bit of problems with her, and she walked out of the house to go live with her 19-year-old druggy boyfriend. And so, I had a bit of problems with her, but when she was living on her own, she realized that she was not only attracted to boys, but she was also attracted to girls, but never said anything to anybody because she had had this reputation of, loving boys and being kind of boy crazy. And literally, she only came out within the last 3 months, maybe 4 months. She's 24 years old. And she, I guess, came out saying she's bisexual. Okay. And that she has a girlfriend right now. Now, that relationship has ended as of, last week or something like that. But so I said, well, knowing your sister's background and knowing how open we were as a family, why did you not feel comfortable telling me, even when you knew at about 16 or 17 years old? Sure. And she said the pressure was different. I guess it was a mixture of things. So even though the environment was very open, she didn't feel comfortable until today, when she's now, she's doing really, really well in the last year, kind of really finding herself and really understanding who she is as a person. And I guess that gave her the confidence to really come out and announce it. She made the announcement on Facebook. And so two completely opposite stories. I do want to speak about the book in general, and obviously it hasn't come out. It's supposed to be coming out in the fall. Yeah. And with that said, can you talk about what made you want to write the book? Well, like I said, I've been through, let's say, hell and back a couple of times. Okay. And I guess back in about 2016, I thought, okay, I would want to write my memoirs. A lot of people, if I really told them everything in my story, I don't think anybody would believe me that all those things happened to one person, because we haven't even done the tip of the iceberg, let alone everything underneath the iceberg, what I've gone through. But that memoir ended up being a kind of a drag in the mud that I thought, no, I can't publish this. This is more cathartic, personal, etc. But I always wanted to say, listen, there's plenty of parents, and I'm going to say both men and women, that are going through such overwhelming stresses in their lives with parenting, with marriage, with all kinds of things, that don't know where to turn, what to do. And I've learned an awful lot from that. So I always wanted to help those people that need that, those resources. When I was, raising my kids and running in my career, I had literally no time to do it. So now that I'm retired, it's been now, kind of my mission. And I really want to create a brand new category in this world called complex parenting that kind of sits on top of regular parenting. So I don't know any family that is normal. Like, your Leave It to Beaver. Well, I'm aging myself probably. I don't know what the equivalent is today, but perfect family just doesn't work. And you talk about divorce, you talk about, mental illnesses. I mean, so many people have so many complexities, and they're never addressed in the parenting arena of any kind. And I mean, maybe from a medical perspective, you get the doctors kind of talking about, from a medical perspective, but there's nobody out there that's saying, I've been through it. I know what it's like, and I know some tips that may help you. And so that's really the reason why I've written this book, and I'm really looking forward to having it released. Well, I really appreciate the firsthand insight that you do have, and you do really present to the reader and the viewer in general about parenting and your whole life story, because it gives a lot of people hope. It gives me hope as a man, even though I don't have any kids, but down the line, you look to these stories to make sure that you don't make the same mistakes, and you try to use that to make the correct decision. So as we keep going into the book, you do talk about those 4 guiding principles. Can you talk about that in general? Definitely. I had to think long and hard. I mean, what got me through, all of my, adversities. And so that's when I came up with the 4 guiding pillars. I mean, I think from a character perspective, I, by nature, I'm a very resilient person, probably, above average strength, to be able to get through things.
Right.
But from a tactical perspective, I said, what do we need? And so my 4 guiding pillars in a nutshell, the first one is, you come first. You have to put your health first. You have to love yourself. You cannot parent properly unless you are confident in yourself, because with all those complexities, shame and guilt are going to override so many aspects of your effectiveness as a parent. So you really have to work on yourself from that, through the doubt, the challenges, etc. So that's pillar number 1. Pillar number 2 is know your child, which we've also talked about, in this show. Know your child. No 2 kids are the same. And if they're adopted, it's even more important, because they have a completely different genetic composition than you do. But even if they came from you, don't assume that they're just a little product of you. They have their own personality, they have their own characteristics, and that's a whole nother conversation that I have, but they are not born a blank slate. They are born with a complete epigenetics framework that has been composed prior to birth. So get to know your kids and how to handle each one. In one situation, you may handle it completely different if you have 2 different children. So that's number 2. Number 3 is to be positive. If you're, I'm a big law of attraction fan. I know that I did at one point, especially having depression, you can get into a very negative spiral down pretty fast. Once you're down, it is 10 times harder to get back up. Right. And so you have to, it's an exercise, it's a muscle to keep yourself positive, to make sure you catch yourself in negative thinking, because it is just thoughts, it's not reality. So, be positive with your own attitude, be positive with your parenting, be positive with your children. Don't be so hard on your kids. I mean, if they have learning disabilities, yeah, they may not be Einstein. So be kind to them in school, that type of stuff. So that's the 3rd pillar. And then the 4th pillar is probably the most obvious, is anytime you have any kind of complexities, be not afraid to get help. Get professional help, get private help, join support groups, be self-educating, get to know, what you're dealing with. If you have an ADHD child, know what ADHD is all about. Right. If you have an LGBTQ child, find out about it, learn about it. So that's really get help, both from professional, private, and self. So those are my 4 guiding pillars.
Debbie Clark, where can people find more about you? And when the book does come out, where can they find it?
Well, I'm still kind of new into developing my business. So, I mean, I do have a website. So that is complexparentingresolve.com. I am in the middle of creating a YouTube channel. It's not as regular as I want it to be with episodes, so bear with me, because I'm still trying to finish the book, and I'm also trying to get the word out. And I will be starting a speaking circuit once the book is out. And so I think there'll be a lot more to come with Facebook and Instagram and those types of things. But right now is complexparentingresolve.com and Complex Parenting Resolve, the YouTube channel.
Well, Debbie, we'll definitely have you on when the book comes out for sure. I appreciate your time today, and I'll definitely put all that stuff in the description box. Again, Debbie Clark, definitely look for her book. When it comes out, like I said, we'll have her on again. Debbie, thanks for telling your story. I really appreciate that. I know it's tough to tell sometimes.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Rob. It's all part of growing.
Okay, thank you.